Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated or underseen. I'm the host for this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined, as ever, by my co-host, Alice Oliver. Alice, how you doing? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh. And yourself?
Well, I'm excited, aren't I?
Oh, are you always excited?
I'm always excited. I'm like a
Especially
puppy.
excited today.
A film-loving puppy.
You are a bit like that, actually, to be fair. It's quite accurate.
Thank you. Cheers.
That is a compliment. Yeah. That is definitely a good thing.
No, I'm very excited because we're joined by another fantastic guest. We're joined by, she's a film critic, she's a writer, she's a journalist, she's a podcaster, Rhianna Dhillon. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Always nice to have. So I think you're our second film critic. We had Clarice Lockery on just after lockdown.
Nice.
No, just before lockdown, I think it was, and now you're joining us a few years and a couple of lockdowns and economic crises later. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on. So we always start with a completely random, non-film related question, and I always put it out to the listeners. And I've got one here. This is a good one that me and Alice picked between us from eTims over on Twitter, who I will give a little shout out to when this comes out. That's at eTimsNet. What is, and I'll come to you first, Alice, what's the most, this could be a contentious one, what's the most overrated sitcom?
Okay, so there are a couple that sort of immediately come to mind, and I'm not shitting on anything. Everyone's got their own individual taste.
It's all opinion, it's all opinion.
That's what we're all about on this podcast, but I do think The Big Bang Theory is pretty overrated. I never really laughed at Two and a Half Men, but the most overrated one, and the one that I just don't understand, is The Ranch, right? Now, I wasn't sure if it would be overrated or not with Ashton Kutcher, right? But I remember watching a few episodes of it. It just popped up on Netflix like a few years ago, and I was like, well, I'll give that a go. Started watching it. I was like, oh my God, this is horrendous. And then for this, I checked. It's got 7.5 on IMDb. And I was like, what the hell? Who has been rating that? So that's got to be
episodes for me on IMDb. People go in and rate episodes.
Yeah.
Who's like going in? It's like, the one with the Germans in Fawlty Towers. That's good. I'm going to take the time to select that individual episode and give it a 10.
I totally understand that, especially if you look at something like Game of Thrones, where there are very clear, like stronger episodes and weaker episodes. So no, I totally get that. But I was just absolutely astounded to see that The Ranch had a 7.5. It isn't funny. It isn't smart. It isn't sophisticated. I was watching it and I was like, because the laughing track as well is so prominent. And I was like, are these jokes? Like, is this funny? I was like, this isn't funny. So that's got to be it.
2/3 of the ones you've just given have got Ashton Kutcher in them at some point.
I know, yeah.
What's your problem with Ashton? Do you know what I mean?
Nothing until recently.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, I should have said.
We'll get onto that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one.
So The Ranch, 2.5 Men, and The Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory, just not as, I don't think it's as good as people think it is. What about you, Josh? What's your one? I think I know what your answer is going to be.
This is going to get me cancelled.
Save space.
When we picked this question, because I thought I don't even going to answer it because it'll just ruin my very minimal career in this industry, and it is. I'm sorry to say, it's Friends.
That's not bad. I thought you were going to say something really edgy. I think all of Gen Z would agree with you that
what about Friends
is overrated.
It's because a load of my friends love it to the point where they quote it, if you're all together, and I'm just like, just over my head. I have tried. It's not that I've not watched all of it. I've tried to watch it, and obviously it's one of those things. It's like The Simpsons. It's so intrinsically linked to pop culture that you can have never seen it and still know what pivot means, and smelly cat and all that.
We were on a break.
We were on a break. All that sort of
classics,
stuff. But I just so it's not. I don't think it's awful. I just don't think it's as good as a lot of people think it is. And for me, it's like you touched on it, Alice. I don't do laugh tracks.
It's hard.
I think
it's hard when you after you spend, because when we were kids growing up in the 90s, I feel like laugh tracks were just everywhere. They were on everything. So you just kind of get used to it and you don't really notice it. Then when you move away from it and go back to it and you start noticing them again, it's like, oh my God, this is horrendous. Like it feels like such a weird just a really weird thing to have happened to television.
It's so prominent in American telly now. Yeah. Whereas obviously we got to like the late 90s and had The Office, Peep Show, Phoenix Nights, and The Royal Family, and it became a lot more stripped back and a lot more character driven and stuff like that. Whereas you still have people in America cheering because a celebrity comes on, whereas in this country, like no,
we don't cheer.
None of that. Thank you.
I had a real shock once when I went to the theatre in America, and everyone cheered. Bill Nye was in it. And everyone cheered when he came on stage. And I was like, what are you doing? You don't do that in the theatre. I felt like so like repressed British person. I was like, this is so not allowed. But they just love an excuse to make noise.
I remember seeing someone retweeting an American cinema in the Iron Man clicking his fingers bit at the end of Endgame. And someone just retweeted and put, I would simply leave. Because everyone was cheering. And they're just like, no, not for me. Not saving the world, thank you very much. So mine's Friends, and I thought about The Big Bang Theory, but I haven't really watched it. Whereas I have tried to sit and watch Friends in a sort of what's this all about Alfie sort of way, and I have there's the odd bit which is really really funny, but I just it's never really, and I don't know if it's the laugh track. I don't know if it's because it's American. My parents weren't big on American stuff. Like like my mum didn't like. I don't know why, but they were very much like they didn't watch American stuff. They didn't watch American sitcoms and stuff. Maybe they just really hate the revolution or something like that. Maybe I've never asked them.
Still bitter.
They can't get over the Boston Tea Party. They've always said that. So Friends would be mine. What about you, Rhianna? Is there a sitcom you think's really overrated?
I mean, there are like things like Miranda and Mrs. Brown's Boys, which I just find unwatchable. I feel like Miranda, I just cannot. I do not understand how anybody watches that show in a serious capacity. And then American-wise, How I Met Your Mother, I never really understood or got into. But I think again, like you, there are like these sitcoms that either I watched or I didn't. And I only watched the ones that I wanted to watch, if you know what I mean. So I might have started. So like Schitt's Creek, I started like 1-2 episodes, and but I know I couldn't get into it.
Oh, could you not?
No.
I really like Schitt's Creek. I just didn't think it was. What I liked about it was it's really heartwarming, but it's not. I don't think it's that funny. Like there's
so you don't go for the humor, you go for the emotion.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I liked the characters, but there was never any moment when I was holding my sides laughing. Whereas I can still go back to The Office and Peep Show and all the ones I mentioned before and still laugh.
Yes.
Or It's Always Sunny, like that's one of my favorites. Is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which
again I've never seen it.
It's quite polarizing. It's the sort of show, because both me and Alice like it, but it's impossible to get people to watch it because they go, what's it about? And you go, a load of people who own a bar and they're horrible
and they're dicks, and that's all I've heard. That's all I've heard.
That's what it's about. So and there's elements of it's like it's almost gone past the point now of like I don't even know if it gets new watchers anymore, new viewers. I think it's just got a solid fan base and those people just watch it,
rewatch it over and over again.
So yours is Miranda, Mrs. Brown's Boys, and How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, I think those are all dreadful. But then only because, like you say, like the golden ones, when you have something like Spaced or
Spaced, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's like actual gold. Then it just kind of puts everything else. It just makes everything else so insignificant. Like say, The Royal Family. I mean, how can you possibly compare? Because it sort of feels like these like longer running sitcoms in America are almost like churning it out, and they have to have a story of the week and everything. Whereas that's, I think, with the British ones, because they're obviously shorter and they
got 22 episodes in a series.
They manage to have like emotion and laughs and manage to be sardonic, and maybe it just kind of plays to British audiences better. One American one that I just think is untouchable is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine so much.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine's great. Yeah. Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec is brilliant.
Parks and Rec, yeah.
Solid.
Do you have so in the spirit of the podcast? Then I'll come to you first, Alice. Can you think of a sitcom you think more people should watch?
More people should watch. That's a tricky one. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen Peep Show, my God, like it's one of the best things that's ever been on TV. Like you say, It's Always Sunny. I mean, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But I reckon the one that I've properly laughed out loud the most at is Community.
Yeah,
that's a good shout.
It's so funny. I watched not all the episodes, but season 1 to 3 again recently, like sort of binge watched it on the bounce. And it's still excellent and it still absolutely bangs. So I think if you haven't seen Community, I think that would be my one, my recommendation.
I love Community
for sure.
so much.
It's so good. It's so funny. And
I wouldn't chang a thing about it.
Very good, very good. What would yours be, Josh?
I'd be tempted to say like It's Always Sunny, but do you know what I'm going to say? Because I don't think enough people see it, because I think A, it has been hard to get hold of in the past, and B, I think people see the subject matter and assume it would go over their heads. But for me, it'd be The Thick of It.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is incredible, and I think people see it and assume it'll go over their heads, but actually the fact that it's set win the whips in Westminster, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just more to do with a load of incompetent people trying to run something. So I would recommend The Thick of It.
Very close to the bone, though, isn't it? At the moment, kind of watching it like
there's an element, isn't there, of people going, "Oh, they should make more." And even Armando, she has said, "It's not funny anymore, is it?" So I can't like. It's funny when it's like they're trying to, launch a new initiative that's a bit like, it's like spongy concrete or something. But in real life, it's like, oh, how do we put the country back together? It's not the same. What is there an underseen one you'd say, Rhianna?
Again, just because British, like early 2000s, two of my favorites. I guess they are sitcoms. I don't know if they count. Green Wing and Teachers are two of my like all-time favorite.
I don't think I've seen Teachers.
Oh, it's so good.
I think it's all on all four.
It is.
I think you can get it on if you want to. If you want to. My partner would say, who edits and produces, would say, 90 Night. She loves 90 Night. But I've never.
Oh, 90 Night is so fucking dark.
I know, and I've never watched it.
I love it. It's been a while since I've returned to it. It is great.
Okay, so we'll get on with talking about this week's film then, which is Get Over It from 2001. So, spoiler warnings if you've not had time to watch it in the 20 odd years since it came out. So we'll come to you first, Rhianna, on this one. So Get Over It then. What is it about, and why did you pick it for the podcast?
So it's very loosely based on A Midsummer Night's Dream, but it's set in a high school. It's a high school comedy. So Burke is like the main character. He's in love with Alison, who's just broken up with him. She falls for this boy band member, Stryker, who also goes to their high school. And while Burke moons over her, he is loved from afar by Kelly, his best friend's sister. And I should say that Kelly is played by Kirsten Dunst, and Ben Foster plays Burke. And I chose this because it is. I had so much fun with this when I was younger. Like it's a really nostalgic watch for me, and I feel like it didn't get spoken about in quite the same breath as something like 10 Things I Hate About You, which is obviously in the exact same category of being a high school Shakespeare adaptation. Admittedly, it's a superior one. I will say that now. I'm not trying to say that Get Over It is a masterpiece, but there is definitely something about it which I absolutely love, because it's like this sort of chaotic fever dream where not everything kind of makes sense or adds up. And if you kind of scratch the surface, which I guess we kind of are today, it kind of falls apart very, very quickly. But actually, for a teenager, I really loved it.
So are you saying it's sort of a little bit underseen and a little bit underrated?
It's both.
People aren't watching it now, and at the time it deserved a better reaction.
I think so. It got really like critically panned. I mean, still now I think it's got like under 6 on IMDb.
So, Alice, had you seen it before? I feel like you might have
seen it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you had. This is the sort of film I can imagine you saying you'd seen.
Yeah.
Well, this is the interesting thing about when you say that you feel like it's a little bit underseen, because given like when it came out and the sort of films that I would have been watching at the time, this would have fit right in with that sort of thing. Like She's All That, Bring It On, 10 Things About You, all that. I was watching all that, and they were all very present for me at that age. But this, I'd never even heard of it, I don't think. So I had like no expectations at all going into this, which I do quite enjoy. What about you, Josh? I don't think you'd seen this, did you?
When Rhianna picked it, I actually out loud went, "Oh yeah, I've seen that," and then found it on Amazon and went, "I have not seen that." And I think because the title's quite generic, I think I was thinking it was like you say, bring it on. She is all that. At one point, I thought maybe the film I've seen is called Snap Out of It, and that's not. I don't think that's a film.
I've never heard of that.
That's an Arctic Monkeys song,
though.
Yeah. But it does sound like that sort of film, doesn't it? Like like Snap Out of It or whatever. So no, I hadn't seen it. So I obviously when I got it off a streaming service, I saw that it was A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is one of the better Shakespeare plays. That they're all good, but it's one of the ones I prefer. So let's get stuck in there, Alice. So what did you think then? What did you think of it overall?
So I thought it was okay. I definitely think that if I'd watched it at the time and when I was the age of the target audience, that this would have been a bit of me for sure. But there is definitely a lot in there to like. So you've got pretty strong performances here across the board. So I don't think anyone stands out really as being weaker than the others. And it boasts a heck of a cast as well. It's probably more impressive in hindsight because we now know how a lot of these people's careers went. But I was mostly impressed with everyone, but particularly Martin Short, who plays the drama teacher / production director. So his character and his performance are really enjoyable to watch. And he comes across as like this failed wannabe actor who has ended up teaching high school kids. So there's a lot of frustration that is in his performance. And sometimes it's bubbling under the surface, but other times it's very overt in the way that he speaks to the teenagers and the way that he treats them. And I think he really helped lift the energy of the whole film. And he is a source of a lot of the comedy for me. And I think, again, watching this sort of film when you're a bit older, it's like how I felt about the dad in Beethoven. Like you connect with the older characters a little bit more because I'm probably closer to his age than I am to the student's age. So for him, he's like, oh yeah, he's the funny one. He's the one. So I thought all the cast and all the performances pretty much were great. There was something in this film that I absolutely love in films or TV shows, and that is a music video that only exists in the world that the filmmakers have gone to the effort to create, right? So Alison's new boyfriend, Stryker, was in a band or is in a band or something. And we get to see a bit of one of his music videos that they did. And that's pretty much just guaranteed to get a laugh out of me every time. I always love the effort they go to, the fact that they've written a song for him. I love all that stuff. What about you, Josh? What were some of the things that you liked about this?
Yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought there's plenty to like in there. So let's talk about the performances. So Ben Foster is the lead in this. Now, Ben Foster, I didn't realize he was even sort of doing acting at this point. He's so young in this film, and a lot of the people in this film have gone on to bigger and better things and are so young. Like, I know they're not high school appropriate age, but it's quite a good attempt.
Close.
Yeah, they're pretty close. I mean, like Mila Kunis is in this, and she's 17.
Yeah,
she's so young looking. She's a lot younger than the others, but Kirsten Dunst and Colin Hanks, Ben Foster. So Ben Foster's really good in this. So I think Ben Foster's a really underrated actor. I think he should be a little while ago, before we even covered the films on it, Alice, I did a thing of when they announced the MCU were going to be doing the Fantastic Four when they bought them back and all that sort of stuff. I did a thing on the Instagram of who should play Doctor Doom, and I said Ben Foster. I think Ben Foster would be a really good big MCU villain. Not that that's the pinnacle of the career. I just think he's the right profile where he doesn't really come with much baggage, but is an incredible actor. He's a good actor in bad films. So he's one of these people who always turns up and delivers. So like, I don't think it's a bad film, but he's amazing in the 2005 Punisher with Thomas Jane. He's good in I know I haven't seen it, it's on my to watch this, but I believe Hell or High Water is a really, really good film and stuff like that. So I thought he was really good in this. I think he's got a really good everyman quality to him because he's not like, I'm not saying he's not a good looking guy or anything like that, but he's not like a conventional, sort of like Heath Ledger or someone.
He's an in-betweener in this.
Yeah, he is a bit of an in-betweener. He is. So that was good. Kirsten Dunst, really, really likable as she always. Well, when she's casting roles where she needs to be likable, she's always very likable. Great chemistry between the two of them as well. I actually believe that those two people would want to be together because don't know for sure, but they might have been at the time. Martin Short, I had him down as a highlight. I mean, he steals every scene that he's in. He sort of looks like a Limmy sketch show character, doesn't he? With like the beard and all that. But he looks great in that. Loved the sort of what they did with some elements of what you expect from Shakespeare. So, for example, this film, not fully, but sort of has a chorus. So it starts with him breaking up with Alison, and then there's a band who introduce the film, but it's almost like they are bringing you into the world of the film in the way that a choric narrator would do in Shakespeare.
Oh, that's nice.
And I thought that was really good. Hadn't thought about vitamin C for about 20 years. And then when she came on, I was like,
I haven't since I saw this film.
So she was in, do you remember did you ever watch the Amanda show, either of you, when that was on? It was Amanda Bynes' show that was when back in the day, and I remember Vitamin C was on that as a musical guest, and apart from that, all I remembered was that she was a pop star around that time. Some sort of really good sort of devices are used in this as well. So like there's a lot of stuff where they intersperse. So it's an adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, in which the characters in the adaptation adapt A Midsummer Night's Dream. So I liked that, because what I liked is they interwove it with like almost weird dream sequences where they were the characters in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it told the story. So I thought that was really good. Some really interesting shots in there, and really sort of and stuff like that. So like when he sees Shane West, Stryker, kissing Alison, there's that bit where he's on his own and he sees them kissing and they're on their own. So stuff like that. I thought interesting little things that kept you engaged, rather than it being, the plot itself is relatively formulaic, but I thought there was some really interesting little devices in there, and pretty funny as well. I thought like there was some pretty good slapstick moments in there and stuff like that. But let's come to you, Rhianna, because obviously you've picked it and I'm waffling on. So what do you like about this film?
I mean, all of the things that you've mentioned, I do think the kind of the cinematography of when they film those like escapist Shakespearean scenes in a forest are really beautiful, because it's still like a set. It looks still like a set almost, but that's allowed because we are in the world of theatre almost like twice over. So I found that really enjoyable. And I think that the kind of high school conceit, I kind of, like I said, I like that it's quirky and weird, and not like, for example, like the parents are like these sex sort of
like sex therapists or something,
therapists on TV, and like the idea of, they come and go just to be like hilarious for like 2 scenes, and there's not much. Although I was listening to Chris and Rosie Ramsey earlier, Shagged, Married, Annoyed, their podcast, and I was thinking actually it's quite similar, isn't it? Because I was like, we don't really have that sort of sex therapist thing on, for kids to be really embarrassed if it was their parents, but actually they were talking quite like explicitly about their sex lives on this podcast. I was like, oh, actually that's our version now, is that everybody says whatever on these podcasts, which will haunt their children at least forever. So it's just I think it's just infused with so much silliness, and it, like I said about the fever dream, it kind of feels like people were high when they were making this film. Do you know what I mean? Like everything just feels a little bit odd and a little bit off kilter. Like they go to a sex show and Carmen Electra turns up, but there's dominatrix, and Coolio has a cameo at the very beginning, but he doesn't speak. Like, why is he there? It's completely inexplicable. But also, I don't care. I didn't mind that. I kind of like that they're just dropping all this random shit in. And that kind of makes it stand out from, like you say, the more formulaic of these movies. And I think the music is great. So I heard that, Kirsten Dunst wanted to do this film predominantly because she got to sing and she really wanted to sing. So it's her like singing debut. And she has like a very sweet voice. I wouldn't say it's incredibly powerful or like, amazing, but it's very sweet. And that kind of touch of naivety is something that I really loved. She does feel very like a genuine teenager, as does Ben Foster, actually. I think he might be 20, but like you say, he looks young, he looks the part. And the fact that he's not like this incredible hunk, but he's also not the very bottom of the barrel. He is literally like just a normal kid who has friends and has hot girlfriends, and that's fine. Do you know what I mean? I kind of like all of that. I kind of like that, the sort of the averageness of that.
You say he is a bit of an in-betweener in it, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think they all are. And yeah, I think Colin Hanks is brilliant as well. I would love to have seen more from Colin Hanks in this because he's
really good.
He's so funny, isn't he? Has like a great little side role.
And Cisco.
Cisco, who I don't think had made it big by that point, but maybe the film came out.
I was like, I've never thought before, I'm going to Google when did the thong song by Cisco come out.
That's in your search history forever now.
Yeah, Can you tell us about this, Mr. Hallam? I just wanted to know when the thong song came out.
When did it come out?
Like not long after this, so maybe like 18 months or a year after this. Obviously, he has the big curtain call ending as well. I like the ending as well. I like a curtain call. It's quite Bollywood, isn't it? That idea of and at the end there's just a big dance and everyone's there. Like
to Earth, Wind and Fire's
to September, which is an amazing song as well. Yeah. So, anything else for you, Alice? Anything else on the likes or any other points?
Well, I just want to mention the highlight of the film for me, which is the actual production of A Midsummer Night's Rockin' Eve at the end. So I thoroughly enjoyed the effort that's gone into this. So the choreography, someone's written lyrics and music for it. The set design is incredible. The costumes are great. And I found it all so enjoyable. And I feel like I could have watched the whole thing. I want to see the whole production of that. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And just one thing I wanted to mention as well, this doesn't fall into likes or dislikes, but I just thought it was funny. So we've got that girl who's like really unlucky. I think she's from New Zealand. Is her name Dora Lynn?
Yeah.
Is that her? Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the film chooses to do to show that she's unlucky is that she puts 50 cents or $1 or whatever it is in the tampon machine. And then she gets loads of tampons that fly out the machine. And I was like,
that's great.
That's a bargain. She's just got like 20 tampons for the price of one. I was like, that's good luck.
That is actually, to be fair.
So I thought that was interesting. It's just that they do hit a few of the girls on the head.
Maybe she's unlucky. Maybe it's like a political point because you shouldn't have to pay for it. So she's unlucky in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's deep in it. That's what it is.
I like it.
I think you've thought much more about that than the filmmakers
did. But those are the main things for me. What about you, Josh? Is there anything else for you?
I think that's in terms of the likes. I think that is pretty much it. I think just to touch on your point there about the play, I think it's a testament to the director because it's not easy, or surely it's not easy to direct a load of competent actors in a play that's meant to be a bit crap.
Yeah.
Like it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be this amazing play, is it? It's not meant to be a train wreck. It's just sort of meant to be a standard high school adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream. So obviously you've got things in it where it's a bit all chucked together on the back of a cigarette packet and stuff like that. Whereas obviously in it you've got loads of really talented professional actors who then have gone on to bigger things. So it's not easy. It's like getting a stand-up to look like a crap stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's not easy to do that. So I think that was really good. But no, that's about it for me in terms of what I liked about it. Is there anything else from you, Rhianna?
There were just like all these little moments which I really appreciate. But yeah, I think we've covered the main ones. Again with Martin Short, I never used to love his character when I was younger watching this, and then have come, I guess, especially since watching Only Murders in the Building and liking him much more as an actor, and then going back to this and then finding him much more entertaining than I used to. So that's interesting about, us growing up and growing like I'm actually more to the age of the teachers and the kids. So fucking depressing.
Us relating more to the pissed off teacher than the bright-eyed kids.
Yeah. But I also really like, I think there's not great messaging in there if we're looking at it now from like our lens, but also what I do like is how nice Burke is to Kelly, to Kelly, to just like he really appreciates her, and he does not like he ignores her the whole way through. He's just obviously he's fixated on Alison, which I think is quite problematic, to be honest, rewatching this. But he is really kind to her and rings her up to say thank you and gets her a little present to acknowledge the time that she's taken to coach him into this play and the singing and everything. And I was like, actually seeing a teenage boy be quite sensitive but not being overt about it is kind of lovely. I really like that. So maybe his sex positive parents and all their openness actually did genuinely rub off on him a little bit, because he's like a decent guy.
Okay, then. So we'll move on to things that we might change about it or that we didn't like about Get Over It. Then, come to you first, Atlas. Is there much, or was it okay? Were you over it?
No, wasn't quite over it. I've got a few things that I want to mention. So first of all, I'll start with a couple of technical points to discuss. So the audio I found during the louder and busier scenes just wasn't balanced that well, so that the dialogue got lost in certain moments. And this is something that I have noticed with a few films from around this time with perhaps a bit of a lower budget. So it just meant that I lost the odd word in certain scenes. It's that there's like a big school dance or something, and like there's music going on and everybody's talking in the background, and just a lot of the dialogue I just missed, and I couldn't quite hear what was going on. Elsewhere, so this isn't necessarily a dislike, but I have to mention it, is some of the transitions in this. So the side wipes and the circle wipes just gave me a laugh every time, right? Because they are already outdated by, what was this, 2001?
Yeah.
They are already
so
10
90s.
years ago.
Yeah.
I know. So I was like, wow, I would just love to know what the filmmakers were thinking to include those in there.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite amusing. Away from that, so I did think that in general, the energy of the film was quite low. So a lot of the time it did just sort of plod along and wasn't hugely exciting or overly engaging. But then when certain characters would come on and some of the stronger performers were on screen, this did really remedy that a bit, especially with people like Martin Short. And then just finally, so I didn't find Burke to be a very likable character, and I didn't find him hugely engaging. So that's not to say that I have to always like my characters to find them engaging. So if you think about someone like Stifler in American Pie or Barry in Road Trip, so they aren't particularly likable, but you are still intrigued by them. Whereas with Burke, he wasn't very likable or intriguing for me, and it just seemed like he was making Alison feel really uncomfortable a lot of the time. However, the film is called Get Over It, right? So that makes me think that maybe the film is aware that Burke is being a bit whiny and a bit annoying about the whole thing. And the film is saying, you need to get over it, sort of thing. So I was sort of thinking about it in that way. I was like, oh yeah, that sort of justifies it, and I can understand that. So I just didn't feel that oomph with him as the protagonist. I think I definitely preferred Kirsten Dunst's character, and I really liked Stryker. Yeah, because he was just so funny in how awful he was.
Yeah.
And like I found that quite intriguing and quite engaging, and his weird British accent. But those were the main things for me. I definitely think there was more to like in there than dislike. What about you, Josh? What's on your list for this?
It's funny, isn't it, when you talk about Burke as a character? I think it's almost a victim of the time, isn't it? Because there was definitely a message in films around this time. Stuff like this, American Pie, other ones that don't come to mind, which the message for young men seemed to be, well, just keep trying.
Yeah. Chase her. Keep chasing
Just keep
her.
going. Honestly, mate. You hang in there. And she eventually she'll give up. Like, it's not, so I think there's probably an element of that. My main one, and I'm surprised it's just come up now, Shane West's accent. So he's English in it. I can see no reason why that character needs to be English, apart from the fact that they may have gone, oh, it's a Shakespeare adaptation, so we need something in there.
I don't think he is supposed to be English. I think that's the point.
Is he meant to be putting it on?
I think they're all like, your accent is so fucking weird. What the hell is wrong with your accent? It's not real.
Yeah.
So that's what I was waiting for.
At one point,
I
was waiting for him to snap out of it and go,
yeah,
okay, this is how I sound, really.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And I think maybe because he didn't do that, my takeaway was, oh, well, he can't do a British accent. But his accent is so bad. There's no way it would get through that many people.
But they keep telling him it's so bad. So it's,
that's true.
But I do have like a weird Mandela effect about this, where I thought there was a scene where it slipped and it turned out that he was American, but that doesn't happen. It just happened. It was clearly my brain just filling in that, because it is quite a gaping hole that scene doesn't exist. But I do think that maybe one day it did. I think that's the thing with a lot of these subplots, is that it feels like they are all missing one more little scene to just tie it all off neatly, and then they just cut it, even though it's only like 80 minutes, so there is room for all those bits to be tied up. But I agree that is definitely one. But the whole way through, the thing is, I think it is kind of hysterically awful, except that I can never quite understand what he's saying ever.
Yeah,
and he says it so
felt that a couple
fast,
of times,
and he swallows it, because he's obviously not so uncomfortable doing this voice. And so I think he says, like, what does he say? He's like, "What are you waffling on about," or something. But I had to like listen to it about 3 times to actually hear him what he was saying. So it's not very successful.
I had thought, and I don't know if I just made this up when I was watching it, but I thought I'd heard, or that part of the story was that he was American, but then moved to England to be in the band, and then comes back with this like phony British accent. Because Burke does say something near the end where he's like, you're starting to sound ridiculous with the accent. You sound like something.
Mary Poppins.
Yes, that sounds like Mary Poppins, doesn't it? So I thought, he must have he's done that thing where he's moved away and then come back. Like, did Madonna do the same thing or something? And it's like, "Oh, hello, everyone. I now speak with an English accent." But it doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah,
that's what I thought had happened.
His dad, so there's a conversation where they're in the club and he's talking to a girl and he was like, "Oh, my dad worked for like the Foreign Office or something. So we've like lived all over, including like X, Y, and Z." And then he said, "In Amsterdam, then I became part of this boy band." And she kind of says, "Oh, so is this your first time in America?" And he doesn't answer, but she's wearing a t-shirt that says "Lucky," and he goes, "Lucky, I guess." And it's like a bit of a, is he dodging the question? I mean, again, I do think that just by us talking about it for 45 minutes, we've already thought about it more than the writers and the director.
I think that's probably true.
Do you know what I mean? There are so many little plot holes in this.
But other than that, which is I suppose an unanswered question that we've just tried to answer, the only other bit was the odd bit of comedy that didn't land. Like when he does, when he does this song about Alison, when Stryker sings the song about Alison, I remember thinking, is this supposed to be so bad it's funny? It's almost like they didn't commit either way, so they just did it, and it's like it's just there, and you're just sort of going, is it meant to be so bad it's funny? Is it actually meant to be okay? I'm not sure. I'd probably fall down the side of it's meant to be so bad it's funny. But
which one? Which guy?
Stryker writes a song about Alison, doesn't he?
I think that's an Elvis Costello song, right?
Is it?
Because Burke sings it initially, and that is so bad it's supposed to be funny, I guess.
Oh no, the one that Stryker says he's written for Alison that he plays in his does he play it in his audition on the piano?
See, I thought that was the same song.
Is it? Oh, maybe it is then. I don't know. Like you say, we've already talked about it more.
But I think he's supposed to be brilliant. I don't know.
Other than that, I don't. There isn't really. There was one bit where I thought when Stryker cheats on Alison, it's with her friend who's played by another really young Zoe Saldana, and I was like, part of me thought it didn't need to be her. It could have just been anyone. Didn't need, but that's neither here nor there. But no, that's about it. Is there anything for you then, Rhianna? Is there anything you would really dislike or you'd really change about it?
Yeah, I do. I think the whole idea of like keep persisting and then they'll fall back in love with you thing, and the fact that Alison then does really annoys me, because it's like, oh, he was justified in his pursuit of her, even if he by the end of it had changed his mind. I thought that was a bit shitty, but I think that's very much early 2000s politics.
Keep trying. just keep trying.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, like 10 Things I Hate About You does exactly the same thing. So yeah, I don't love that. And that, there are a lot of women just there in bikinis to show off their, well, as we hear, there's like a quote, literally, tits, yeah. So, but again, very early noughties kind of lens, which I don't think was great at the time. But yeah, I think those are kind of my issues looking back on it now. It's more about the sort of the gender politics of it all, rather than the slightly janky bits about it, which I find quite endearing and charming, and that I kind of like that it's not really slick. And even like the green screen at the end when they're all dancing, kind of love that. I'm kind of okay with that now. Like, it looks terrible, but that's fine because it's so of its time. It's so of an era. And it just takes me back in a really lovely way. And like you say, kind of showcases these amazing actors that have gone on to incredible projects.
Mm,
And even, I mean, to be fair, Kirsten Dunst had already done some incredible projects. She'd already done like the Virgin Suicides by this point.
Interview with a Vampire when she was a kid
Interview
as
with a
well.
Vampire, yeah.
It's only the year before Spider-Man as well, to be fair.
Yes,
So she would then have gone on to, and I think, but in terms of those films and the aging of it, it's by no means the worst offender. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's not American
way.
Pie. I know it's a bit different to American Pie because American Pie is far more rooted in sex and a sex comedy, whereas this is more like a teen comedy or more of a romantic comedy. But it's by no means as bad as something like American Pie. It just is. There were those things where you look back and you're like, no, that wasn't great, was it?
Yeah.
Like you say, like the just keep trying, or the needless scenes. But like, even the scene where they go to the weird dominatrix club thing doesn't really add that much to the film. It's almost like they went, well, we'll put it in though, because it's funny, isn't it? Or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
kids in a sex club, sure.
yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then, and then we'll try and figure out if we think it's underrated, underseen, etc. Alice, how do you think it did critically? We've already sort of had a hint from Rhianna that it didn't do great. How bad or how good do you think it did?
So I think Rhianna said that you think it gets under a 6 on IMDb. And I'm just wondering what them over on Rotten Tomatoes would think of it. If maybe, I probably think the audience like it more than the critics. I reckon the audience are probably giving it maybe like a mid to high 6. What do I think? I'd probably give it like a 6 max. Like if that'd be me being a bit generous. I think it didn't quite hit the beats for me, but I know that I'm not the target audience. But I do think if I'd seen this in 2001, I would have been into it. So I'm going to say 6, but I reckon it got a bit lower than that. I think you're probably looking at like a low to mid 5 overall.
Okay. Rhianna, do you know how it did, or do you want to have a guess?
Oh, I've looked. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's absolutely fine. So let's get stuck in then. So at the time of recording, over on IMDb, it gets a 5.7, which is sort of around what you were saying there, Alice. But then over on Rotten Tomatoes, it does drop a little bit. The audience give it 51%, and the critics give it 43%, which if you average those out is more or less a sort of a 5 out of 10, 50% sort of score. So, I mean, for me, I would say that's underrated, because I think this is a sort of solid high 6, 7 out of 10 teen comedy. It's pretty harmless. It's good entertainment. It's well paced. It's engaging. I would say that's underrated. What would you say, Rhianna?
Yeah, I think they are incredibly harsh about this film.
43%.
I don't think it deserves the vitriol that it's got. I think they should have embraced the quirkiness of this movie rather than lambasted it for that.
What would you give it? What is this for you, score wise?
I think this is a high 7.
Wow, yeah.
But again, it's so difficult to separate sometimes your teenage brain from your adult brain, because I'm coming at this totally I've seen this a lot over the years. It wasn't just I watched it once and then again now I've watched it a lot over the years. And I did it I even did a video for the BBC. What was it called? I can't remember now, but it was about like teen adaptations of classic literature.
Oh right, and so
this was
10
in
things
that.
I Hate About You, and
and
like
Clueless,
that.
And
of course,
the terrible O. My God,
I think I've seen that one.
Oh, it's Othello. Oh God, right, it is. With Josh Hartnett again,
oh dear,
multiple offender. But yeah, so I think how it stands alongside some of the worst ones of that. I think it's pretty up there.
So I think. Well, what do you say then, Alice? Well, I think we can we agree it's underrated?
I think we could say that it's a bit underrated. And then, do you know about the box office?
So in terms of the box office, all I can find on Box Office Mojo, it grossed just under $20 million worldwide, which I think that's pretty low. I mean, it's hard to say because you want to go considering who's in it, but none of them were.
They were famous,
big at the time.
But the budget was $22 million,
right,
and it grossed $19.9 million. So it didn't even make back his budget, only just, but it didn't hit it.
Right.
So I think there's definitely an argument there for it being underseen. And I think when you think about the sort of company that it was in with the other sort of films that were coming out at the time that was similar genre and how popular kind of they became and how widely seen they were, this just does, this isn't necessarily even that much worse than those films. So it's interesting that it wasn't even on my radar whatsoever. And obviously you haven't seen it, Josh, either. So I think that's really interesting, but I would definitely say that it's underseen.
Yeah, I think so. It's underrated and underseen. We could do we should do some sort of series on teen adaptations that they turned into films in the late 90s, because there's so many. Because so this is Midsummer Night's Dream. 10 Things I Bet You's Taming of the Shrew, isn't it? It's Clueless Emma.
Yeah.
And then what else? So the other one I was thinking about is, do you ever watch She's the Man? That's 12th Night.
Yes. Love She's the Man.
Trying to think of other ones. They've never done any have they done any tragedies?
Yeah. Othello.
Oh, of course, yeah, Othello,
tragedy. Yeah, that was so fucking bleak though. So maybe that's why they realise that teenagers don't want to watch
just do the light ones. just do the comedies.
Let's do the comedies.
Well, anyway, Rhianna, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about Get Over It. I hope you enjoyed it. What have you got going on? What can the listeners look out for?
I am on every Monday morning on 6 Music with Lauren Laverne, talking about film, streaming, TV, my recommendations. And I'm also on every other Thursday afternoon on BBC 5 Live with Nahal Arthur Niger, talking all things movies and playing some film games. And I also do a podcast called Pod, which is about podcasting. And it's for podcasters. So it's kind of like the business of podcasting. It's pretty niche. But it's a lot of fun. We get to interview we've had my dad wrote a porno on there, No Such Thing as a Fish, and a lot of big names, as well as talking to people behind the scenes, producers, and the money side as well. So learning how to monetize your podcast, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's fun. So that's called Pod.
That's great. Well, we'll put links to all that stuff and your social media and stuff in the episode notes, and do some shout outs when this comes out as well. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And I will say, if we haven't convinced you to watch Get Over It, at least just watch the opening sequence with Vitamin C and singing Captain and Tennille. It's so much fun. I used to listen to that on my iPod regularly. I loved it so much.
Well, there we go. Another guest episode done. Get Over It is underseen and underrated, we reckon. So thanks very much to Rhianna for coming on. It was a pleasure to chat to you. Make sure you check out her pod and listen to her on the multiple things she mentioned there. I'll put links to it, all the stuff I can, and her social media in the episode description. We will be back with another episode next week in your ears, talking another underrated or underseen film. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, the email address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all the social medias if you just search for Just Films and That, and you'll find us. If you fancy supporting the podcast, getting a little bit of extra content, bonus content, ad-free episodes a day early, heading over to patreon.com/Just Films and That, and you can get a few little bits over there and support us as well, and we very much appreciate it. We're on the television as well, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, or Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. We're also uploading all our little episodes onto Daily Motion. So if you slide on over there and search for Just Films and That, we'll pop up talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films.
Yes, lots of ways to see us, hear us, get in touch with us, and all that stuff. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.